Hey everyone, welcome to Security Live. Security Live is a streaming show focused on AWS and AWS partners solving security challenges for customers. Each show we feature an AWS security partner and we discuss various topics related to all things security, compliance, and AI, etc. You can tune into Security Live on Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And we stream every other Tuesday from 8 a.m. Pacific time and normally 4 p.m. GMT time, but we've doing this clock change
We're in
thing.
the twilight zone.
So you can join me in the chat. You can join us in the chat and you can maybe tell me what time it is where you are, because it's that time of the year where here over in EMEA, over in Europe, we've moved the clocks back and we've fallen out of sync with everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Margo Cronin. I'm a security and compliance specialist SA with AWS, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host.
Hey everybody, my name is Rob Hale. I lead AWS's security partner business in EMEA, and right now in the UK, we have no idea what time it is. It's that really awkward moment, as Margo said. We've changed our clock times a little bit early this year. Everybody else is not changed yet, so yeah.
Wrong side of the road, marmalade, all of these unusual cultural things. What can we say?
There's nothing wrong with marmalade, and let's not even get started on the imperial system, although,
Yes,
we could fill an entire session up with that.
So normally we stream at 4 p.m. GMT time, correct? Every month, except for this month.
That is our normal time, except for just today.
Yes, until we stop moving the clocks back. And we were just saying that every year we're going, oh no, this is the last year. They're actually going to stop it. And then next year they do it again. So
it's good that we don't have any computer issues based on time anymore.
Maybe AI can solve it for us, actually. That would be a good agentic AI use case, wouldn't it? Surely they could fix it.
Could you get an AI agent to change the clock on my car? That would be the test.
Or the clock in my kitchen. I think that's the one that I look at and I think, oh, maybe I'll leave that until we move the clocks again. But listen, enough about clocks, okay? People are going to they're like, bring on the security partner, Margo. We are thrilled to have Lahav Savior join us. He is the CTO and co-founder of AllCloud. And AllCloud deliver a prevention-first security approach for organizations' most sensitive workloads that enables AI application development and deployments in a scalable manner. And he's going to talk to us all about this today. And they are a premier consulting partner and an audited MSP partner for AWS. So we're really thrilled to have him on the show.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, such a comprehensive introduction. Amazing.
I think you can do a better job. You actually have to do a better job now. I've just raised.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you so much for having me here today. Pleasure to be here. I mean, for the second time on the Security Live. Last time was in the Hamburg Summit. And just a couple of words about myself and AllCloud. I'm the CTO for AllCloud, as you said. I've been also the AWS top ambassador for 2025 in EMEA.
Wow.
I got a big award. I mean, a big surprise for me. So thank you for that. But more important, I mean, what are we doing, right? So AllCloud is a premier consulting partner, but also a strategic collaboration partner for Amazon. We operate in Europe and in North America. And I think what's most interesting, we are highly focused on two main areas that seems to be so relevant today. One is AI, right? AI transformation happening big time. And we are realizing that it's all about building agents, running agents, getting as much as possible with autonomous operations. And what we learned that this is all relying on a very strong security capabilities and foundations. And this is what I'll talk about today is the other area is the security, how we build an AWS environment that is truly secured, that is, eliminating or at least making the maximum possibilities to avoid mistakes and leaks. And this is how we came to the prevention first approach. So excited to discuss more about it soon.
That's awesome. Great to have you back with us. So, we were talking, and we do obviously a little bit of a prep before we do these sessions, just to get to know each other. Although we know Lahav and AllCloud really well, but we were talking around, what's the best approach to security? There's been a lot of talk around either protected environments or focusing more on detection. So, what's making these kind of environments attractive to attackers, and what's the best approach? Is it that protective, or is it more of a detective approach?
Well, so I think, generally speaking, Amazon security and the standard practices are good, right? I mean, there's nothing bad with them, and I mean, eventually the ecosystem is so big, so it works very well. But when we talk about large environments with a lot of people involved and a lot of changes, I think, the more you go to more sensitive workloads that are less tolerant to mistakes, you look more for the prevention first. And what is a prevention first? Eventually, if we look, historically, right, we used to build our data center and put a firewall in front, and we were able to control every bit and byte living in or coming into the environment. In the cloud environment, it's a little bit different, right? I mean, there's a whole API control plane that is, we interact with the API, and there's a whole data plane where the VPC and the network is. Eventually, the configurations are running through the Amazon API, what is the control plane, and not the data plane, and we have less control of that. And the approach which we bring and which we think is a stronger for sensitive workloads is a prevention first. We are very big believers in data perimeter. I don't know how many people out there are very familiar with data perimeter. I think it's one of the Amazon most brilliant innovations that came in. Amazon with the data perimeter really enable us as a customer to build a very clear definition of a perimeter around the Amazon APIs. It's not our VPC, is the other dimension where all the configurations happening. You were asking me what is our, believe and preferred approach for securing the environment is building a very clear, data perimeter around the AWS configuration side, whether it's an SCP, VPC endpoints, or resource policies or RCPs, and then of course putting everything possible on the detection side like we used to do with a lot, so many tools available. So the combination of prevention first and then all the detective is how I think customers should build their environments.
And how do you see the role of AI in all of this? I mean, when I'm dealing with highly regulated customers with sensitive workloads, often they're kind of thinking in terms of using AI to improve their detection and protection mechanisms, when maybe actually we kind of observe security problems that need to be resolved first, security practices that need to be resolved first before that happens. How do you see AI playing here? Do you see it like actually helping? Do you see it expediting issues? Do you see the same problems just at a bigger scale?
Well, definitely, I think the rise of use of AI and the appetite and the desire of each and every customer, even very big one and very sensitive ones to use AI, just elevate the need for stronger security, because AI is in some way even behave, on its own, right? It can make the decisions, which are sometimes even undeterministic, right? So I think the point that we are running workloads, which in some way are autonomous, requires us to take, the security to the next level. So to build stronger guardrails around where this, agent is running, that is possibly make decisions. We have to put the very clear guardrails of what data it accesses and what two parallel agents at the same time can access. So, I think it raised the need for the next level of security, even before we talk about the AI security on its own, from prompt injection, there's a whole threat landscape that is developing. So I see those customers who really build a strong foundation, their landing zone with the prevention first become a differentiator for them running AI workloads for the reason they trust. They trust the environment and they can do things faster, comparing to those who just implement in their normally open style of configurations or detective first. They are a little bit more cautious on deploying these AI workloads because it's a little bit more risky. So I think the combination of prevention first and AI workloads is probably the good recipe for success, making AI at scale.
Just going back to what you said before, Lahav, around data perimeters. So take us through, what is a data perimeter, and then, is it something that anybody can implement, or is it something you need to have a distinct plan and an architect from the beginning? What's your experience?
Well, number one, data perimeter is available to anyone. I mean, data perimeter was created and invented by the AWS Identity Services team. They put up the framework. I think they even invented the name of data perimeter, and it's basically available to anyone, right? Data perimeter is a combination of the security control policies, of the VPC endpoint policies, and the resource policies, or even the RCPs, which are more broader, right? So SCP stands for security control policies, and RCPs, right, for the resource control policies. So, and network control policies are network endpoint policies is that. So I think the combination of the three and defining who are the principles that can interact with my environment on the resource side, what are my principles, what resource they can interact with outside or inside the organization, who can interact from our network, and what identities or principles can work from our environment. Putting all this together is what makes that data perimeter working. It's a configuration. It's a little bit tricky because there are so many conditional keys and configurations there, but eventually it's available to anyone. And I think it's more of everything is a mindset. Am I going to protect my environment with a prevention-first approach? Yes or no? The thing is complex. And I think this is what we try to do as a partner, is to kind of reduce the complexity from our customers and eventually have a predefined or pre-configured data perimeter, which eventually is a set of policies that achieve either the whole organization perimeter or an OU perimeter. And we try to, accelerate their journey and simplify their configuration, because our customers are mostly interesting to have, run their business workloads on the environment, not to have all that detailed configuration. This is where they leverage us, and this is where our solutions are helping them.
I think the identity and access management team are going to absolutely love you, Lahav. I mean, they don't often get a lot of love on the show, and we're talking about, new buzz terms a lot of the time, but, you're calling out the IAM team, and we're not meant to use acronyms. That was what the acronym alert was down at the bottom there. So identity access management and service control policies and resource control policies. And something I often come across is this feeling sometimes our customers have that there's a proliferation of policies, that there's so much they can do. And you talked about the power of data perimeters, and that's definitely true. But sometimes it's nearly too powerful, right? Like there's this proliferation of policies, and customers can find that overwhelming. What recommendations do you have there, and can you help customers there?
I think the number one thing is build for what you need and what's possible. Right? I think there's, endless options of what's possible, right? So the number one thing which I'm recommending to customers is, let's look at your security needs. Let's build the environment for what you need. And interesting, and I'm lucky that I get the opportunity to work with very challenging customers that has either critical infrastructure or highly regulated or even defense-related stuff, that they really, push us to the edges of what's possible. Yeah. The number one thing is, build the security for your needs, not for what's possible. Because if you can, it can be a very long journey to what's possible, and it's inefficient to do something unnecessary. So map your needs and build the perimeter, but also think of what's the threat landscape is out there, right? I don't think there's a need for most customers, for any principal in the organization to be able to interact with any outside resources of my organization. So I think there are some general rules I would recommend everyone to put in place as a beginning of a data perimeter. Yeah. The other thing is, think of the supply chain evolution, right? We know that so often there are vulnerabilities which we consume through the supply chain. So the normally open situation, I think, is dangerous, right? So I would say work on a whitelist basis where you can, and it will eliminate a lot of the potential supply chain issues. live within your VPC, whitelist what your resources need to be consumed, and then let people now be as much as possible independent within this walled garden. Because the number one thing which we all care about, especially when we build these environments, is allow the agility, right? We want to deliver the promise of the cloud. The promise of the cloud is move quick, do things in self-service. You're a developer, you can run everything inside. So the idea of building a very strong data perimeter outside and allowing developers to have as much as possible freedom with their boundaries, of course, inside the cloud is a real promise that we want to bring to developers and to, retain the agility, even though this could be very hard on the environment.
Yeah, it's a key concept that we have, and one that is really important in security is to have almost friction-free security. So if you're configuring things correctly and you have environments that are configured so you can move quickly, security shouldn't be getting in your way, but it should be enabling you to do things in a secure manner. And so we also have the concept of security being the easy option or easier option, and that's really important with developers.
I do want to touch on this agility because this is a key friction that we see, the paradox between security and agility, right? And something, is super important to double click on, because when you build those secure environment, for those who work in banks, I'm sure they have enough trauma for, right, nothing works out of the box. It's so hard to deploy anything. So what we learned in a solution that we offer is that we built what we call is a guardrail-aware CDK constructs or Terraform templates. There's no magic in them, but besides, they are built in a way for the normally closed environment. Okay, they are aware of the guardrails. They know those strict security policies. So me as a developer, when I deploy my Lambda, it won't hit all the guardrails that the security team put in place. So I can deploy my Lambda into the environment, following all the security best practices that were the golden path that was defined by my organization. And then it works great, because the alternative to that is, take your Terraform module from the repositories or the standard CDK construct, you immediately hit the guardrails. And this is where the negative experience is happening, which we want to avoid. Another element that we created, we learned that in large environment, there's a lot of communication happening between the landing zone team and the workload team. To communicate CMK, ARN, what CMK,
customer managed key and Amazon resource name. It's like a test. It's like an AWS certification exam.
The good thing is, Lahav, if we forget any acronym, we can just ask Margo, because honestly, she knows it all.
Well, maybe people in the chat can join in and answer some of the acronyms there for us.
So we are communicating a lot of landing zone information, and for those Unix admin in the past, right? Environment variables. So we used to configure. The application with so many environment variables, right? So we communicate a lot of information from the landing zone to the workload, like subnet IDs, like encryption keys, a lot of information. And by communicating this through what we call the metadata layer, we again reduce the friction of if I move if I deploy a workload between environments, there's a lot of changes need to happen because of these environment changes. Once we build a metadata layer, and these templates or constructs or modules are by definition reading them from the metadata, we reduce the friction of the developers, and they freely can push the workloads into different environments, and magically they work. The magic is because the information is available there. So by combining, building the guardrails, putting in between the metadata layer, coming together with the templates, they work fantastic together. And this is how we achieve security at one, but also the agility on the other side. And this is why we have the happy consumers, which we all look for, right? The developers, we want them to deploy as quick as they can.
And Lahav, how do you balance guiding customers when it comes to, we're talking there about data perimeter. So that's very much in the data protection or in the preventative, area. But then you need to balance that with detection. You can't just throw detection out of the window. So how do you balance that with customers, like enabling both of these practices in parallel, and then maybe, just to make it a multifaceted question, throwing in the automation and remediation at the end? How do you guide customers there at AllCloud?
So when we talk about sensitive workloads, I mean, the number one concept in securing environment is never trust one factor. So even though we put in place the prevention, it does not mean we give up any of the detection, not at all. It works, I mean, there are two elements of security. There's a prevention, the policies, the perimeter, but also detection. We keep on scanning for potential misconfigurations. We keep on scanning the different, mistakes that could happen in the policies everywhere. In IAM, in security groups, we continue monitor it. We don't give up anything. But to the point of now a response, so we also implement a response and automatic responses. We have not given up any policies. We added the upper layer of a prevention. But when we talk about, I mean, the auto-responding, so another key missing area that we identified with customers is how much are they ready for incident response? I mean, unhappily, we saw too many customers that build great environments, but they never took it to the fully operational step of wiring it to the SIEM, to the incident response capabilities. They haven't even trained and run trials on their environment how to respond. So part of our standardization of this solution is providing the full capabilities of wiring and integrating all the detective tools into the monitoring systems out there, into the SIEMs, into the auto remediation runbooks. So at the end, there's an environment which is well hardened, well monitored, workloads inside, but also operational ready. I mean, I'll give you one example, right? When you work with different libraries in the environment, there are different DevOps stacks deployed. When you realize there's a vulnerability in one of them, how would you know which teams, use whatever template that carry the vulnerability? By having this comprehensive, in some way, CMDB or clear asset management, the security team can quickly get to the team who run a specific workload in a specific account, a specific region, and reach out to them, please go update this, template that you've been used before, because it contains a potential security weakness. Wiring it all together, all the way to the fully operational thing, is really an accelerator for customers to really realize the value of the cloud. And then number one thing we're trying to achieve is trust. We want, customers to trust the platform, which will enable them to bring all the sensitive, all their craziness of ideas to the cloud and enjoy it. Because the cloud and the technology is great. We want to make it available to customers to maximize their investment to the cloud and turn it to really a differentiator in their business, right? Drive whatever agents, only based on trust. That's what we learned. That's why we try to work everything together from prevention to a fully operational environment.
Awesome. That's really cool. A lot of what we've spoken about today falls in under maybe zero trust. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. Everything is every request, every access, in or out of the environment should follow the zero trust. Verify at the request level, never trust a session. Every request should be monitored and verified. And I think this is what their perimeter does, right? It does not trust everything. If, for example, I have a session that was started, somewhere, and for some reason it will move somewhere else, it will likely fail, right? It's meant to fail because I got a permission to work from my location, from my device. If for some reason my token is, being used somewhere else, it should immediately fail. So yeah, data perimeter completely enforces zero trust, and all the way to the infrastructure part, not just to my session.
Yeah. And anyone who listens to the show knows this is my favorite question, but I genuinely like asking our guests this question. If there was one security problem, if I could give you a magic wand and there was one security problem that you could get rid of, something you're seeing customers do over and over again, what would that be?
I think the number one thing is think how the supply chain could work against you. Because I think we're in many ways very, very naive using the libraries available out there.
Yeah.
And if we don't put the boundaries around the environment, I think that all those great libraries that we're all relying on, I think it's literally relying on, is super dangerous because it's an open source, and we have seen different behaviors on these libraries. So build a perimeter around your environment and assume those supply chain libraries can be used against you. Never trust them. And by closing things up, even though there is a vulnerable library, it will not work against you because it cannot interact with outside.
That's really, really good advice. I love that, and it's something that we talk to customers a lot about, and particularly developers as well, because they want to move fast and they want to use libraries of code and repositories and stuff to accelerate their coding, but there's risk inherent in that. So you've got a huge amount of experience as AllCloud and an amazing team to have. How are you helping? And you've brought all this together for customers. So how can customers take advantage of that? Is there a service that AllCloud provide to customers that incorporates all this learning?
Probably, yes, of course. So
who knew?
Right. Luckily, with the strong collaboration with the different AWS services, from the identity services team to the LCA team, we launched Trust Stack. Trust Stack is our solution. Everything which I explained up until now is a package solution for customers to deploy their environment and provision their AWS environment with a prevention-first approach. And people ask me, okay, but we do have a huge landscape out there built there, and we're unlikely going to do a new one. Of course, no one expects you to do something new. But in order to help customers to leverage all this accumulated knowledge, we came up with what we call the security needs analysis. The security needs analysis, yeah, right there for me, is a way that we map the customer needs to what the best practice is. And after mapping it, we can help them to pick and choose whatever capabilities they want to bring into their environment. And of course, if it's a net new environment, we have a ready-made, references that are quick to deploy, and you can shorten, the time from 2 years of full implementation to a couple of months. But this is for net new. For existing one, we can pick and choose all these goodies and bring it to your environment.
And so anyone who wants to try that, the QR code is up in that corner there for me, up there apparently.
Possibly that corner.
Yeah, there we go.
It's on the screen.
So please take it down. Lahav, very quickly, I think you'll be joining us at reInvent, right?
Yes, I'll be joining you at reInvent for AI Live.
Love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Love our friends at AI Live. Obviously,
Yes.
the show isn't quite as cool as Security Live, but it's getting there.
Good competition, love it.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me, a pleasure, and I look forward to see everyone again.
Thank you.
Amazing having you with us. Thanks, Lahav.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we have, I think, a very interesting guest as well, another attendee of reInvent that's going to be joining us, and that is Palo Alto, I believe.
Yeah, we're having a chat with Spencer Thellmann. Should be cool. Folks, see you very soon. Hey, welcome to AWS Security Live. My name is Rob Hale. I lead AWS's security partner business. This is AWS Security Live, where we talk about security in the cloud environment in AWS, and with an amazing group of partners. We broadcast live, and we are truly live, so you can ask us questions every other Tuesday. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. if you're on the Pacific side of the US. If you're in the UK, we're kind of in the twilight zone between time changes. So we're 3 to 4 GMT. Next time we'll be starting at 4. And then of course, if you're one of our continental friends, as my co-host is, then you're an hour later. So speaking of which, I'm joined by my amazing co-host.
Hey, Rob. Yeah, my name is Margo Cronin. I'm a security and compliance specialist SA in EMEA, so based out of mainland Europe over here in Zurich. 1 hour later than you guys. Who knows how many hours earlier or later than Pacific time. Let's wait a month until it gets a bit easier. And yeah, I get to work closely with our security partners, so it's always great to chat to them on the show.
Amazing. We have quite a lot of listeners apparently in Asia Pacific as well. So we're going to have to go truly global on the time zones and introduce some random time zones around the world. If you're listening to us, yeah. If you're listening to us, let us know where you're coming from. Let us know where you are in the comments. We're live. You can ask us questions. We might be able to answer most of them, but our host will definitely be able to answer questions. And we've got an amazing host on today. So, sorry, we have an amazing guest on today. We also have an amazing host.
You've promoted him. He's that good. He's that good.
Maybe it's a new host.
I'm going to make him a host.
What have we got on? We've got Spencer Thellmann from Palo Alto Networks. Spencer, welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for having me, and good afternoon.
Hey, look, it's good afternoon, or is it good evening, or is it good morning? Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm in Santa Clara, California right now, so it's actually the morning over here.
Awesome.
And it's pretty, I mean, we often say, introduce your organization, etc. Palo Alto Networks hardly needs an introduction, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about your role in there as a principal product manager, Spencer.
Certainly, yes, absolutely. So I work at Palo Alto Networks here as a principal product manager, specifically on Prisma AIRS, which is our AI security platform that's designed to discover, assess, and protect AI apps, models, data, agents, et cetera, at the posture and runtime levels.
And so is this a new, and when I say new, like over the last 2 years, something that has come to market in response to, the surge in AI and agentic AI and LLMs and FMs, et cetera? Is this something over the last 2 years Palo Alto Networks has launched?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we actually started working on this almost exactly 2 years ago to the date. So it's been really interesting. It's changed really quickly. It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Last year was a lot of teaching, right? It was a lot of learning together, understanding what is AI, what are the threats to AI, and sort of sharing that with the broader community. And things have sort of changed as we lead into this year. What I see is that a lot of enterprises are like actually deploying things in production now. And perhaps quite surprisingly, many of the organizations that I work with sort of leapfrog chatbots. They went straight to agents and are investing a lot there. So we're doing a lot of engagements right now on the agent security side, and it's been really interesting to watch this sort of new industry unfold, which is AI security.
Yeah. We held quite a lot of customer kind of roundtables and discussion groups, and one of the things that really struck me was that everyone was experimenting with generative AI over the last year. But there was much more experimentation going on than production, but that changed this year. And then Agentics come in, and within the period of 6 weeks, chief information security officers, CISOs have been looking at it and saying, well, look, what do we need to think about around agentic? And they've gone within 6 weeks to what do we need to think about? So in the weeds of we're running production workloads with agents, and now we're trying to think about how we can make them more complex, more capable, and security implications and what we need to think about from a compliance perspective. So it's moving really, really quickly.
Exactly. And how I think about this is I think that the benefits of agents are profound, right? But so are the risks. So we have an obligation, if anything, to help our customers capture the power of agents, but do so safely and securely. Because I want people building more with agents. I want them shipping these things right as fast as they possibly can, but do so in a way that's like safe and secure, where the risk has been reduced down to the physical limit, right? That's like our kind of philosophy when we think about these kind of things.
Yeah, and I think that model is exactly the same with security leaders, because security leaders want to be able to enable the business, but they need it to be done safely and in a compliant manner. So, most of the security leaders and the practitioners I talk to are really in the phase of, look, we're doing this. We've got use cases for agents both on the business side and on the security side as well. We need to put in place the frameworks that govern their use and then make sure they're secure and compliant. So, where do you start from a if you're looking at agentic AI, where do you start in terms of security?
Yeah, so let's define an agent. I think that's an important place to start. So an agent is an autonomous application that has memory and has the ability to invoke tools. So an example of this for the audience, if you're sort of not familiar, a common consumer use case could be something like trip booking. So if I'm flying to, let's say, New York for the weekend, right, booking a trip is kind of difficult. I have to book flights, hotels, Ubers, etc. Right? What an agent could do is I could tell it my budget, what I like to do and what I don't like to do. And then the agent could autonomously, on my behalf, interact with different services, different APIs in order to book a trip for me from beginning to end. Right? That's just an example of what an agent might be through the lens of a consumer app. And so because of that, our mental model is that basically, if you're familiar with the threats to chatbots or traditional generative AI systems, pretty much all those still apply. So things like prompt injection attacks, toxic content, data loss prevention, malicious URLs going into and out of these things, right? Topics. A lot of our customers that we work with, they want to make sure that their agents aren't speaking about certain topics. So it's the same. But because agents have autonomy, they have the ability to invoke tools and they have memory, right? There are agent-specific risks as well. Things like tool misuse, memory manipulation, cascading hallucinations, and the like. So that's how I like to think about it. It's like a superset. Like everything you know about AI security still applies to agents. It's just there's a little bit more to think about because agents go beyond the realm of a traditional chatbot. And so
cool. No, I was talking to a group of security leaders at customers a few weeks ago, and I can't attribute the comment because it was Chatham House rules, but one of the leaders there, was describing agentic security as you've got to treat them like toddlers. Digital toddlers was the phrase they used. I thought that was amazing. I'm sorry, I know who you are. I can't attribute you because we're on the Chatham House, but I just had to steal, and I said I was going to do it. I was going to steal the digital toddler comment, but I thought that was such a good description of how to think about agents from a security perspective.
Well, Spencer, just a comment there that I really loved. Just before we move on, I just want to pull you up on something you said there. You said traditional generative AI systems. So that's how quickly we're moving. We already have let me use the phrase legacy, that's how quickly these, generative AI systems are changing. And you defined agent and agentic there. Do you want to weave into the definition for the audience and then build on the security story what an MCP server is? Because you're also securing the protocol, right? And, we've got this evolution, not just of generative AI, but of the protocols these guys are using.
Exactly. Cool. So MCP is Model Context Protocol, which is sort of marketing term for it is like USB-C for AI. It's a way to expose APIs and different services as a sort of through a conversational mechanism so that your agents or your apps can integrate with various services sort of through natural language. It's really easy to build these things. Like you can do it over a weekend. I would recommend getting hands-on with this because it's the best way to learn about MCP. But there are some really profound issues with MCP or Model Context Protocol as of today. Things like rug pull attacks, impersonation, and the like. So we're putting a lot of effort into that right now because we sort of recognize that oftentimes what tends to happen is that product and engineering move really quickly, right? There's all this new fascinating material, but then the security part sort of lags behind, right? So what we want to do is help our customers leverage MCP, but do so again in a way that isn't inherently risky. And Lahav, before I came on, was talking about the supply chain. It's the same problem now with MCP. Here's an example. Let's say that our team is connecting to an MCP server today. Tomorrow, that server gets compromised. And because of that, it starts responding to tool calls differently. It starts sending, let's say, malware back to my engineers in their IDE if they're connecting to it through that mechanism. So if you trust an MCP server today, you can't by definition trust it tomorrow blindly, right? You have to continuously assess these things for drift, for rug pulls, et cetera, just like you would in a traditional software supply chain security stack or something like NPM or PyPy, right? Sort of very similar mental models applied to model context protocol as well now. So agent security and MCP security are very like intrinsically linked. And when I've spent about 1,000 hours now speaking to CISOs and CIOs about AI security over the last 2 years, so I've kind of seen it all. And whenever we sort of start a new engagement with the company, our model for doing this well is that you really have to do 3 things. You have to discover all of the AI agents and like MCP servers in your environment. You have to assess them for risk across posture, runtime, and supply chain. And then you have to protect them against the risks that you've discovered, right? And if we start with the first part, discover, there's really 3 kinds of agents as of right now. There are like the enterprise agents that you build in a service like Bedrock. Then there are the SaaS agents that your employees are constructing in different SaaS apps. And then there are the endpoint agents that are running on your employees' machines. A great example, that would be like an agentic ITE. And each of those has their own set of risks, but ideally what you want to start with is just understanding the totality of what your agentic ecosystem looks like. So you can shift like the unknown unknowns into known knowns, and then sort of proceed with understanding how to secure these things. But it all always starts with discovery whenever there's a new modality that sort of launches.
I think that's one of the key kind of questions that, if I'm a security leader or a practitioner, I need to know what's going on. It's like you had shadow IT before, now you have shadow AI, now you have, shadow agents, and just knowing what's being used and then putting some sort of framework around them, some sort of guardrails around those digital toddlers, that really, really has to help, their use to be accelerated, but in a secure way.
Absolutely, because they're users, but they're not humans. They connect like applications do, but they also have identity and privileges, right? Agents are this sort of new phenomena. That's a combination of the things that we know about people and machines, but in an interesting way. Yeah, there's a lot to sort of think about here. And fundamentally, the math boils down to non-determinism. I think that's like the most important thing in AI and in AI security. Like if you take one thing away from this conversation, it's that AI agents are fundamentally non-deterministic. You can't control what someone's going to ask your agent to do. You can't really control what your agent is going to do. And you also can't control what the agent's going to send back to the end user, right? So you basically have randomness on the input and the output, and randomness means risk, kind of almost by definition. And so like the first response to that might be, well, let's reduce the randomness, but that inherently makes the agent less valuable, because as you slide towards determinism, the agent can do fewer things and fewer people use the thing, right? So you have to be sort of comfortable with the randomness and the non-determinism. And the only way to do that is check inputs and outputs to your agents for threats in a deterministic fashion. So the reason that AI security is so extraordinarily difficult, but also valuable, is because it sort of crosses the gap between determinism and non-determinism. That's how I like to think about this sort of mathematically, and it's very relevant to agents.
Yeah, and of course that complexity and that risk increases as you head towards more of the agents have more business value, because the business value comes from the complexity of the tasks. So although a really simple diary assistant agent is kind of useful, really what you really want it to be able to do is to then collaborate with other agents, which then means you have a number of different actions that could be taken by a number of different agents. And so it's complexity is added in there.
Absolutely. And it's sort of compounded by the fact that like the ratio is something that we're going to have to start to think about, the ratio of humans to agents. It'll be like 1 to n, where n could be 10, 100, thousands, or tens of thousands, depending on who you sort of listen to in the space. And so we're moving towards, for the first time ever, I think, this sort of blended workplace whereby humans will be working with non-human identities in order to achieve more in less time. But then you have these issues of these sort of, it's almost like a relay race. Like imagine a human being does not have permissions to access like a CRM, but the agent that they're communicating with does. So if they ask the agent for information, they might get access to data that they shouldn't have access to given their job title or role or something, right? So the propagation of like identity and privilege across the stack to enable that mesh to occur is like absolutely top of mind, because that's a really, really hard problem to solve. So and that's why everything, again, always begins with discovery. Like understand what shadow agents you have deployed, what issues they're subject to at posture and runtime. Privilege and the identity side is important in that regard. And then finally protecting against those so that you can continue to leverage all this stuff, but do so in a safe and secure way.
I know Margo's got a question just on the tip of her tongue, but just want to say to the audience, if you have questions around AI security or agentic security, then put them in the comments. We can grill Spencer. We can grill Margo. We can get some answers for you. So yeah, don't be shy. We're live. Sorry, Margo. I know you've got a question. You're desperate to ask.
Well, I was actually just going to point out the QR code, which has just gone down now. It was up there for a while, and we'll put it up again before the end of the show. But I think this is actually the listeners can follow, and it's the Clara AI security assessment. Is that correct? Which will guide them through this discover, identify, discovering the agents, what are the risks, and protecting them against that. Is that correct?
We do that through Prisma AIRS and the risk assessment, as you said. I believe that the QR code takes people to Deploy Bravely, which is our website for Prisma AIRS. We actually, just about an hour and a half ago, we put a press release out for Prisma AIRS 2.0. So this is the first time anyone's ever heard about this. So today we're announcing and releasing Prisma AIRS 2.0, which contains model scanning, red teaming, and agent security all in one kind of brand new version of our AI security platform. So it's an exciting day for us here. And that's a very timely conversation that we're having right now.
Awesome. And there's actually call outs on the breaking news in the chat. And also Maurizio Ortez is talking about the points you're raising regarding evaluating non-deterministic versus deterministic needs, and then balancing that against risks versus benefits of AI agents.
That's the fundamental constraint problem at the heart of AI security. Like it's that, as Mauricio just put forth in a sentence. That's it. That's why AI is valuable. It's also why it's risky. That's why AI security is valuable, but also difficult, right?
And there's frameworks right around. So there's frameworks like the OWASP top 10 for generative AI, but there's also an OWASP top 10 for agentic AI as well. How would you go about working backwards from that framework? Is that, if you cover everything on the OWASP top 10, are you kind of are you good, or are there other things that you recommend that people look at? And if you're going to use the OWASP, how do you go about and do that?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. We work a lot with the OWASP Foundation. We helped to write the agentic threat report that you're referring to, which I think was published in February. It was like the first pass of the top 10, which contains cascading hallucinations, memory manipulation, tool misuse, and the like. So we've had a really delightful experience working with them. But the way that I think about this is maybe slightly differently, which is, and they're not mutually exclusive. So whenever you're building an agent or a chatbot or something, you kind of have to do 5 things. The first is model scanning. You have to scan your AI models for threats before you run them. Because just like, let's say, container images a couple of years ago, AI model files themselves can contain threats. They can contain deserialization vulnerabilities or malware or references to known C2 servers or something. So you have to scan your AI models for threats before you run them. That's like the first thing that you categorically need to do. And then the second part is like evaluate the posture of your app's models and data. So like, let's say that I have a model endpoint and that its permissions are exposed to the public internet. So if that happens and the adversary finds my endpoint, they could burn my tokens, right, which causes some kind of financial harm to my organization. But they could also try to exfiltrate training data. And that's why it's important to see the lineage between your models and data. Like if I know a model's open to the internet and it was fine-tuned on corporate financial data or user information or something, then that ups the risk pretty dramatically, because if the adversary finds the endpoint, they could sort of attempt to siphon the training data out of the model endpoint. So it's important to have an understanding of the posture of your entire AI stack and then remediate those things. For example, close down that model endpoint so that the internet can no longer access it. And then the third part is red team or pen test your agents and chatbots. Like you have a moral obligation to sort of launch mock attacks against your own AI experiences so that you can know which threats go through and which don't before a human being tries to do that. That comes back to determinism, because in AI, the threats live in the space of language. They used to live within the network, et cetera, but now it's about what people are typing into your agent or chatbot. And so because that's again, this like non-deterministic surface, what you have to do is you have to find the threads in language that lead to danger and then block them off before people even try to do that. So that would be like red teaming your own agents and chatbots. And ideally what then happens is you take the insights from red teaming and you use those to inform your guardrails, your runtime policies, which could be firewalls or APIs or something, to say like, if red teaming identifies that my agent is vulnerable to prompt injections, or it's talking to people about politics and it really shouldn't be, I need to detect and prevent that so that when a human tries to do it, it's blocked before it even gets to the agent. So I think there's a really strong flywheel, and probably where our whole industry is going, of red teaming. So attack everything you have all the time and send signals to defender agents, which push changes at runtime or config. And that creates this sort of flywheel that hardens, in this case, something like an agent or chatbot. And then the fifth piece would be like the agent security side. So for those three types of agents, endpoint, enterprise, and SaaS, have an understanding of what you have deployed, discover it all, assess it for risk, and then protect in different ways based on the specific modality of the agent.
Yeah, I think that's really important when you look at, a couple of things. So the first is that, in incident response, you've got to realize that every plan fails. So you better keep testing that plan and make sure that, you know what to do when it fails. Do your controls work? Do your guardrails work? And then what do you do when they don't work? And how do you have a mechanism that you can adapt to that? And then the second part is around the hugely increasing amount of regulation as well. So you've got you've got things like cyber resiliency acts in the EU. You've got more and more controls around resiliency in banking and critical services within the UK and in the EU and globally as well. And so as agentic is used more in those environments, having a good testing regime where you're actually red teaming or testing, you're improving, that's super critical, because you're not just talking about, can the service be compromised? You're also talking about how resilient is the service, and that service could be critical to customers.
Absolutely. There's also this like trust and safety piece, which is like, you really have no idea what people are going to ask your agent to do. So it's important to understand like the breadth of what it can do and then lock that down, right? You want to understand the universe of what's possible and then establish a subset within the universe of things that you're okay with your agent doing. Because it's really difficult right now to understand like who your agents are, what they're doing, and why they're doing it. Those are like three questions that are difficult to answer. For example, like if you have an agent that's designed to sell people things and it's starting to send people to your competitors, which happens like all the time, you want to know that that's possible and then prevent it from occurring so that when a human being enters that loop, it doesn't happen to them. That's just one example of like where this sort of transcends security to a degree and also becomes a trust and safety problem.
You're touching there on red teams, and it's such an interesting topic. Is there now going to be even more need for observability, like understanding what the agent is doing, under what conditions, what identity it's assuming to do that particular action that generated that non-deterministic output, and revoking that? Is that something that we're going to see now more and more at scale?
Absolutely. I think you have to maintain like a deep audit trail for every single agentic interaction, and also the interaction of interactions, right, in the form of like a correlation rule or something, because that example that I said before, if you have humans that are working with different agents to accomplish tasks, it's about what each agent did, but also sort of the relay race of how they in aggregate work together to achieve some kind of goal in a multi-agent system or with people in the loop too. That's what we also talked about in our press release this morning. It's really important to understand what agents you have running across those three spaces, again, enterprise, SaaS, and endpoint, and then also like what it is that they're actually doing. And ideally, at runtime, you prevent your agents from doing bad things that are incongruent with purpose. But it's also important to have like a retroactive audit log so that, as an example, if some legal audit occurs, right, you have the paper trail that shows what your agents were doing, when, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a really good point between kind of agentic and the human as well, is that everything on the agent is logged, so you have a really good log of exactly when it went on. So this leads into a question that Mauricio's asked on the chat. So do you advocate to use tools over human oversight for some of those 5 controls?
Tools over human oversight. Well, humans are always going to be involved, right? A great example is like policy definition. Like for model scanning, like the security team ultimately has to decide what specific controls they're okay with and which they categorically want to block at the model file level. Similar thing with red teaming. Which out-of-the-box attacks do I want to launch versus which custom ones do I want to create? So humans will be involved in sort of in setting the sort of policy definition, and then from that point onwards, I think we see the role of AI in sort of making that happen. Great example is like red teaming. In our case, we have a red teaming service, and it's agentic. We actually have agents that launch mock attacks against other agents or chatbots across multiple turns, so that we can show you which threats go through and which don't. because they act like people, right? If you've ever been to a conference and you've seen someone try to hack a chatbot, right, you know that they start with a goal. The goal could be something like, leak your system prompt. And then the human, through a conversation, tries to see if they can do that or if they can't. And that's exactly how our red teaming agent works. So I think there will always be sort of this synergy between humans and machines. And this is a great example of that.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of security folks who are really, really interested in AI security and agentic as well. And we ran Reinforce our AWS security conference. We brought it to London for the first time at scale a couple of weeks ago, and every single AI and agentic session. And they're all learning sessions. Was absolutely. We literally had to. There was queues at the door. We had to control numbers and change rooms. It was amazing that people are really trying to learn. So that goes on to another question from Isho, which is, do you see a trend or a need from red teams to actually become AI specialists, or do you think traditional red teams can work on AI systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably see a combination of the two. If you work in pen testing or if you work in red teaming, I think you pretty much have to be aware of these AI threats. What is a prompt injection attack? What is toxic content? What does the topicality threat look like? What is context poisoning for agents, et cetera? Because I expect that is something that you'd be asked to do, right? And ideally, you also need to be able to use the tools that can do this at scale. Right, because I think specifically with agents, we've sort of hit the limits of the human ability to do this massively, right? Because again, it comes back to non-determinism. If you have the universe of language, which is enormous because we're talking about tokens, which is just strings of words that lead to different outcomes. So the way that this came around is like about a year ago, our customers came to us and they said, we're having human pen test our AI models like once a quarter. And if you think about that from first principles, that really doesn't make any sense, because that's kind of like going to the doctor once every 30 years, right? The resolution isn't small enough. You have to be able to pen test or red team your AI agents, models, chatbots, et cetera, whenever there's a state change in the asset itself. And that can happen a couple of times a day. So my advice would be become really familiar with the tools needed to do this, because it's going to be like a strong requirement just because of the expanding surface of AI. You need to be able to pen test these things effectively all the time.
Spencer, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Rob and I are not too sure what hour. However, will we see you at reInvent?
I believe you will, yes. Yeah.
That would be awesome. Do we have time for one more question? Let's squeeze in quickly. How do you see the balance evolving between automated remediation, human oversight, and CloudSec operations as AI-driven threat detection becomes more common? And you have a minute to answer that.
Okay.
Good luck.
I used to work in this space. So my thinking here is that if you look at the alert rates for a lot of companies, they've effectively hit escape velocity, where you basically the capacity of a team and the alert rate, and the spread between those two curves is friction, right? And so I think that the only way to sort of proceed is through some augmented approach, right? Whereby you have we announced an agentic platform this morning that does something similar, but you have agents that are sort of triaging the L1, L2, getting rid of most of the spread. And then you have human analysts that work on the sort of more thorny issues that are raised. And that's the only way, because again, the spread between alert rates and capacity is also a gap that the adversary can exploit. So the future is always human plus machine. In that case, it was a SOC context as well.
Amazing. Spencer, I want to say thank you so much for your time and your insight as well. And to our audience, it's been amazing, really, really interactive, and we hope you had a really useful, enjoyable session. I certainly did. Thank you for watching us on Security Live. We'll be back in 2 weeks. See you soon.